Hi, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Or if you are on YouTube, we're filming this live and we're doing the audio version as well. Today, I have a very special guest who is on the show. I'm so lucky to have her. I'm so grateful to have her. This is Sarah John Pickering. She is the self-love, spiritual, badass woman that completely transforms women's lives. And I'm just so excited for today's conversation. So, welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah, ready to crack on.
So, one of the really cool things is right now it is nighttime in Sarah's world and it is morning in my world. So, she is in Bali. Sarah, I usually ask people like, where would you go in the world? But it seems like you're living kind of in your place. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about you, about your business, about life, like what led you to
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you, beautiful. So I am Sarah. I'm a spiritual self-love coach, and I help women really understand themselves, get to know themselves, and go from potentially self-hate or feeling lost or feeling confused or feeling like they're not good enough, all these different areas of life, to completely transforming from the inside out, right, from within, so that internally and externally they could become the best versions of themselves, so they can live in joy, excitement, fulfillment, all that jazz. And yes, I'm living in Bali at the moment, originally from the UK, but it's way too cold there and way too miserable, and I'm all about like the vibrant the happy vibes. So Bali was the place that I came just before the pandemic broke out as well. And it just so happened that a lot of people said, leave, like go home, like it's not going to be safe there. And my intuition was so strong that I had to stay. And I'm so glad that I did.
That's awesome.
Yes.
So, like the Bali vibes, you got all this going on for you. How did you get into the area that you're in? Like, how'd you get into this arena of like self-love, spirituality?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. So I was never spiritual growing up, and I definitely did not like myself either. Like I really was back in the day. Um, I started drinking from a very young age, so early teenage years. I was consistently drinking to the point of blackout, and then as I got older, I continued into my late teens and then early 20s, and then I started traveling as well. So to the outside world, I was super confident, super happy, super bubbly, like life and soul of the party. But behind the scenes, I was deeply unfulfilled and really depressed. But I didn't feel like I could share that with anybody. I felt like I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to bring anybody down. I didn't want to be rejected. Um, so I thought I'll just keep face, I'll keep this mask on and pretend that I'm happy and pretend that I'm this confident, fun, bubbly girl that's, traveling the world independently, and, nothing phases me. And I was jumping from job to job, but it was because I was deeply unfulfilled. I was jumping from country to country because I was running away, like running away from myself, yet finding that I always followed me. And
Everywhere you
then,
go, there you are.
uh exactly. And then I was also a love addict. So I would jump from relationship to relationship. Or if I had periods where I wasn't in one, I was again deeply depressed and doing anything I could to gain external validation from men and attention, because I really hated myself. And the thing was, even in relationships, they could have loved every part of me. They could have done everything for me, or, they could have loved me so much, but it wouldn't have mattered. It was never enough. I would always sabotage. I would always like not feel like I was good enough, not worthy, and all that jazz. So I call it, what I used to play out was drinking and destructing, drinking, distracting, and destructing. So I was obviously consistently blacking out drinking. I was a love addict. I was jumping from country to country. I had over 50 different jobs before I started coaching. Like, I was so deeply unfulfilled. And it just got to the point where I remember being so mentally unwell that I didn't want to be here anymore. I really just did not understand life or want to be here. I felt like I was successful in other people's eyes and felt like a failure in my own. And it was heartbreaking. So I just couldn't understand, like, what's the point in life? There was no point. I had no purpose. And then that's when I started to find coaching. I went through all of that and then had a really dark time and didn't want to be here. The only reason I stayed was because of family. I couldn't bring myself to do it, you know. So I then found a coach, and as much as I didn't really understand what it was, I was like, I want to be able to do this for people. This has changed my life. Like, what the hell? Like, how do I do this? You know? And the more I had coaches and had coaches from all around the world, and then I found a coaching institute which taught me, and then I hired more coaches and did more courses and accreditations. And yeah, I just lived and breathed it so that I could change myself first. And then there was just no way that I couldn't share it with the world, you know. There was just no way that I could, go from that to who I am now, who's, like independently, happily single and living in like paradise in a 5-bedroom villa that I've manifested, that I saw before I even moved in, before I even knew was real. And, just having this business where I get to serve women all over the world and change their lives and really understand myself and love spending time with myself when I used to hate it. Like, to go from that to this, and to be in such fulfillment and purpose, and the spirituality side as well. Like, it's just such a major transition that this is my mission, to share this with as many women as I can around the world.
Can you imagine if everyone felt like that? Like, if everyone were to find what lit them up like that, it's almost like life gets to be better and better and better every day. And it's like, it's almost unbelievable. You get to a point where you're like, is this my life? Like,
Yeah.
I get to live this life when, I mean, my story is pretty similar. Like, I went through a very dark time where it was very, very dark. And it's like, looking back on that, it's like we had to go through those things to get to where we are now. But it's
100%.
like, and we have compassion for the person in that place. But it's amazing that's crazy how we can just switch from being in a place where it's so dark, so depressing, so lonely, so isolating, to now being in this expansion. So like, that's just amazing, Sarah. Like, absolutely amazing.
So blessed, right? And yeah, I totally feel that, like, you have the heart space to hold people, to support people. You understand that everybody's doing the best with what they've got. If they knew better, they would do better, right? So there is so much love, but it's because I'm spilling over from a full cup, right? Whereas before there was a lack, I pour from a full cup, and it's just so different to where I used to be.
That is so exciting. So I know we wanted to talk about like how this plays out. And we kind of had that analogy of, since a lot of people on here who are listening are bikini competitors, we were talking about like that, almost like that imposter syndrome. Like, you have this huge glow up, you change your body, everything's different. All of a sudden your confidence shifts, and maybe old friendships that were self-serving fall away. But then it's like, how do we tap into that newness? And this is like such a relevant topic, because this could be in jobs, this could be in anything. We're going to relate it obviously to like the fitness side of things, but it could be literally in anything. Like, I'm sure you went through the transformation, we've all gone through it, and it's this very uncomfortable place where it's almost like you're in a limbo where things have fallen away, and you're kind of like in this space where it's like the awkward phase of growing out your hair, where it's like, what do I do? Like, I'm at this place where it's almost like a mullet, I'm kind of teeter-tottering. How do I transfer to the long, beautiful hair I want? It's that energy. So let's dive in.
Get extensions, jump in. Yeah, I know what you mean. Thank you, beautiful. Yeah, it's the identity shifts, right? And I did, when I first got into it, I went through a huge phase of all my friendships fell away, and I was I moved apartment. I was completely isolated. The only person I had at the time was my past partner, but that was, you know, rocky. And there was a lot of then new people coming into my life that weren't necessarily my people either yet, you know, because I wasn't fully developed in that area. So it was like, what's going on, you know? So it is, you become this new person, you have this new self-confidence, you have these standards as well. And not everybody likes that. Not everybody likes you changing. Sometimes people want to bring you back down to who you used to be because that's familiar for them, or people want you to be on their level because sometimes it can they feel like they're casting shame on their life for them not fulfilling their dreams, or them not, you know, really going for anything in particular, or as far as their soul may want them to go, you know. And it's easier to play into the ego and play into the victim and blame and not go for dreams, right? So much easier. It'd be so much easier to just give it all up and just fucking mindlessly, numbly watch TV and do fuck all, you know. But it'd be so much easier, you know.
Actually easier because like I mean the action's easier, but then the feeling isn't. The feeling,
Yeah,
you know, so it's not
you die inside.
Yeah, you're trading one for another. It definitely is like, but yeah, it's definitely like that crabs in a bucket. I don't know if you talk like
Yes, I love that.
in the
Yeah.
UK, but it's almost like when people feel you elevating, it's almost like, oh, she can't change. She can't change. Like if she changes, I gotta change. And it's like this, oh my gosh, maybe I don't know how to change. Or they just, some of them aren't even that self-aware. It's like they just sense it and it's an immediate like, ooh, like
Yeah, trigger. Yeah, 100%. And I love the crab analogy actually. And it's like, well, if you just stacked yourself, we'd all get over the side, you know?
and then you just gotta dive back for that last one.
Exactly. But yeah, it's I think it's especially challenging as women because I think naturally the majority of us come from a people pleasing element. And naturally, I talk about this a lot with my clients about the 6 core human needs. And actually, it's important to probably speak about the 6 core human needs because that's exactly the biggest thing that changed my life when I became aware of that, because I understood what they were. I understood what my core drivers were. And the thing is, if you are out of balance or you're not meeting your needs resourcefully, that's when you can end up in anxiety, depression, or unfulfillment. Whereas if you're meeting them more resourcefully, then that's when you end up in fulfillment, joy, excitement, and all that jazz. And one of my core drivers, and I think for most women, it is love and connection. So generally what we will do for love and connection is potentially sometimes keep ourselves small or feel like we've got to people please and, you know, not celebrate ourselves, not be too big, like, because we almost have this fear, I think, of self-love being arrogance, when really it's so much deeper than that. Like confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance is actually insecurities trying to prove something. Confidence is not having to prove yourself to anything or anyone.
Yes.
And there's a huge difference.
Yes, completely, 100%. And like that arrogance is usually coming from like a space of lack. It's like the ego, it's a scarcity. So it's really interesting. And I think a lot of times too, we don't want the rejection. It's like, you know, we're such tribal, like when we actually think about it, like we still have that innate fear of being isolated from our people. And it's like, so when you're making that transition and you're falling away from the people who were your tribe of people, your connection, you're now not connected. And it's like that's a scary place to be. Like that's
100%.
really scary. So when people are transitioning into that, is there like a way that they can, like what's the process? Because once you get into that space, it can feel really scary, very alone, and you can almost want to revert back to be comfortable.
Yeah. And this is where I believe self-love comes into it, right? Because we are not then externally validating the love and connection. We don't necessarily have to go and find that. You know, I believe it's really important for us as human beings for us to connect with one another, but also it's super important that, like, first you connect with yourself, because understanding who you really are, like, how are you going to know who your people are if you don't know who you are, you know? And that's where I struggled for the longest time. I was like, I don't know who I am, so I'll just hang out with anybody, you know, and I'll adapt to my surroundings. And then when I got to know myself, I actually became a lot more introverted. I was so extroverted and became a lot more introverted as I loved myself more, because I had the standards of who I wanted to spend time with, and I wanted to spend time with people that really lit me up or helped me grow or expanded my life in a beautiful way, and, you know, could hold space for me and I could hold space for them, as opposed to just surface level shit, you know, like just surface level shit that isn't the deep connections. So I believe the transition is 100% like self-love, self-awareness is one of the biggest first steps. And then moving through into, you can manifest, right? You can manifest your ideal tribe of people that are good for you. So you get clarity, you know, get clarity on who it is that you want to spend time with. Where do they hang out? Maybe change you out, get out of your comfort zone and go and spend some time in the places where your people would potentially hang out, you know? Also, with the 6 core human needs as well, like, I like to get really clear with my clients, like, what lights you up, what brings you joy, like, what are some of the things that if you didn't care about time, money, energy, resources, skill set, knowledge, wisdom, you know, if you weren't, but if you didn't have any limitations, any limiting beliefs, like, what would you do for fun? Like, what would you do to bring excitement into your life? And stop
I have to
fucking
ask.
scheduling it in.
I have to ask you this though, because I did a lot of coaching back in the day, and a lot of my clients were
Wow.
like, I don't know. And I got this
Yes.
analogy, almost like when you're in survival mode for so long, or when you're so
Mhm.
detached from your feminine essence and that juicy life and that pleasure, it's almost like blinders on a horse. Like, have you ever
Yeah.
seen horses with the blinders and they can
Hmm.
only see a few steps ahead? They can't
Yeah.
see the expansion. They can't see pleasure. They're only looking at the dirt in front of them. And I would always use
Mhm.
that analogy, and people would be like, oh my God, that makes a lot of sense. But it's
Yeah.
like, it's almost like when you're stuck in that cycle for so long, you may not even know what lights you up. So do you have any like suggestions for finding that bliss, finding that happiness, finding that, like, I mean, you went to Bali, you like literally went around the world to find more joy, more bliss. But like, what are
Yeah.
some other ways that people can like discover that?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for asking. So, one of the things I do with my clients, even actually bringing it back to potentially soul purpose as well. So, what I did for myself, even before I came to Bali, and even when I was debating whether coaching truly was my soul purpose or not, like, because I love variety. I love, you know, having lots of elements in my life, where some people love certainty. I'm more of the uncertainty scale. So I would actually write out, like, if I could do any career in the world, what would they be? And I would just brainstorm all the different ideas, no matter how crazy they were, right? So even on there was like being a circus performer, like running away and joining the circus, like absolutely crazy, right? Working on a cruise, working as an artist, like being a pilot, all these different weird, crazy things, right? And what it actually showed me was that it wasn't that I wanted to necessarily do these careers, but maybe I could actually see some glimmer of something in those that I could turn into a hobby or could turn into something that would potentially bring me joy, right? So that's one idea of allowing yourself to just brainstorm and be like, if there was no limitations, I could do any job in the world, if I could try them all, you know, like almost like a buffet of careers, like what would they be? Because there's something underneath that, you know.
Yeah.
um and then going back to, what did you used to love doing as a child as well?
Yes.
You know, what did you used to love doing as a child? I used to love playing football. I used to love drawing and painting and things like that. And I used to love writing poems. They are all still things I love doing now, you know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's like so funny how we almost like disconnect when we're going through the teenage phase and we're trying to seek that validation. And it's like almost like we lose that child like play and, you know, pleasure, and that loving like finding something that you just love and just losing your time in it, like when time just it like melts away, and it's almost like,
Yeah.
and we as coaches know that that's like kind of the quantum field, like you're in that, you're experiencing just this timeless energy. And like when you tap into that, it's so powerful, like it's so amazing. And that's so like, it's just so interesting, like bringing it back to that. Like a lot of people are like,
Mhm.
oh, I used to love doing this, or I used to love playing football, which that surprises me about you. But I
I
think,
know, such
you
a
play,
tomboy.
is it soccer or is it like throwing the football too?
Soccer.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I was
played
like,
for years and I loved it, like even playing board games as well. Like I still love doing things like that. I love going to escape rooms, but it's again, I believe that when I tapped into my 6 core needs, I woke these things up. And another thing that I feel like can help as well is actually seeing who potentially triggers you, like from a way of potentially feeling like you're either jealous or you look up to, right? Because back in the day when I didn't like myself, I would find myself jealous. Now it's more of a, wow, you inspire me, like amazing, Thank you for showing me what's possible. So, because then you can kind of see, well, what is it about them and their life that makes me feel drawn in? Or what is it that I like about their life, What are the elements? And see how you can play with that as well.
So if someone kind of brings up that trigger, so say you see someone and they trigger you, it's like someone online and they're celebrating something big. And Melanie talks about this. We found each other in Alpha Femme, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I swear I love the people who are in it. It's just such an amazing community. And they just did their Attune to Fortune. I don't know if you were in the live stream. It was
I
so
didn't see it, no. I've
so
been back to back, but it was going to be amazing, hey?
so good. Like, but it's almost like you're seeing all these posts of people who are celebrating things. And Melanie talks a lot about that, how people get so triggered by that because they're like, oh, it's all about the money for them or whatever. And it's not, it's a celebration of, I've gotten to help this many people. But
Yeah.
you're seeing it through a lens of like what you want to experience almost,
Yeah.
So it's like when people are triggered over a post, or they see, a lot of it is, on Instagram, people see people's curated lives, like you and I are both on Instagram so much, and it's like sometimes people may see that and they're like, oh, why does that girl get to drink out of coconuts by the pool? I totally seen your stories, Sarah. How does she get to, drink coconuts by the pool and have this like beautiful pool day, and I'm just over here like doing work I hate and think like, what is the energy behind that? Like how can people start to shift and up level their experiences?
I love this question. This is so cool. Thank you for asking. So, firstly, what came through to me when you shared about the money things, when people are sharing a lot about their money wins and things like that. What's really interesting and good to potentially reframe that as is they're celebrating freedom. Like, see them celebrating freedom and know that maybe that's just what you want as well, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's not, then that's okay too, right? But imagine that that they are celebrating how much freedom they've created, and see if that starts to change the narrative from within, Then on the second flip of the lifestyle, let's say, is use that freaking frustration, use that anger, use that trigger, and turn it into, this is showing me exactly what I want. Thank you, universe. This is a sign that it's possible. If she can do it and if she can have it, then so can I. What's the difference? I might not be there yet, but there's once upon a time where she wasn't either. We also have to take into consideration that everybody that shows up on the gram in whatever way is a human being. Everybody's a human being behind those tiny little pictures that we post. And I will share my vulnerable sides. I will share the things that I struggle with and my challenges throughout the journey, right? And not everybody does, and that's okay. Each to their own, right? Everybody can do whatever they want. It is freedom for that. But ultimately, we don't see the whole story. We don't see the whole narrative. We don't see what their childhood was like. We don't see what maybe the relationship struggles that they've had, or the battles that they've gone through for them to be able to get the life that they've got now. You know, if I wasn't sharing this story today and I was just this girl that lives in Bali that does just drink coconuts and, you know, celebrates herself and loves herself, if I was just that girl, but you know, what about everything behind the scenes? What about the story? You know, like there's so much. If you know how much depth there is to yourself, then I feel like you can be compassionate and you can see and feel how much depth there would be to everybody else, you know. And just seeing that we're all souls, we all want the same things ultimately deep down. We all want love, and we all want to be, we want to be loved, we want to give love. And so I believe in giving love to that person, like thanking them. Thank you so much for showing me the way, showing me the light. Thank you so much for proving that it's possible. You're an inspiration, you know? That's what I would say.
And like, I mean, there's always like a reframing, like just like what you said. It's like you feel that trigger, and then it's like, where is this coming from? Like, is it something
Yeah.
about her? Like, if you see Sarah, you know, sitting by this beautiful pool in Bali, and you know, living in your dream place in Bali, and someone else sees that and they feel a trigger, maybe it's because part of them, you know, I remember when I lived in the Midwest, and nothing against the Midwest, but I don't know, Sarah, have you been to the Midwest in America?
Not really. Uh-huh.
It's a lot of farm town, cows, and I live in the middle of like farm town in Orlando. You know, there's uh orange groves, but it's beautiful, and it's like it's tropical and it's pretty, and you'll see a wild pig like running past the Walgreens. You know, it's funny, but we still live
Uh,
very like it's a very beautiful community, whatever. But it's like when I lived in the Midwest, I came into a lot of that energy where it's like people just feel stuck because they were born there, they went to high school there, you know, and it's a small town feel. And so
yeah.
they don't really realize, like, they may see you and they see, like, oh my gosh, that's something that's possible. And they may feel that
Mm.
trigger because it's like, I've never experienced that level of they save up all their money all year long, or they'll save it for 5 years to go on one trip to Bali, and you get to live that every day. It's like you're living their vacation every single day. And it's like when people make that shift where like, oh, I see Sarah doing this or whatever, it's like you've created that life because you believed it was possible. You made a decision that
Yeah.
it was possible. You know, people can uproot, they can move, they can change, they can do all these things that
Yeah.
their soul. You know, I remember when I switched from, I was living in Minnesota, which is very Midwest. It's like upper near Canada. It's cold, like hace frio for all my people in Florida, like super cold. And I packed my car with just the bare minimum that I needed. I love minimalism, and drove to
Oh,
Vegas. It was the most freeing feeling ever. Like it was amazing. It was
yeah.
expansive. I remember driving down there and I was like listening to music and just the wind was blowing through my car, and I was like,
Amazing.
yes, like so excited for this adventure. And it's like you can create that feeling, you can create that vibe no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's like you can shift into that energy. Like let's talk a little bit about like that, like leveling up energetically to be more in tune with what you want.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's super cool. And it is like your environment can, like, you shift your environment, like you say, go away for a night, you know, go see if you can go stay somewhere a little bit different, mix up your energy a bit if you need to, you know. As with the level up, I believe one of the best things that we can do is ask more empowering questions, right? So we can use this from a perspective of when we're triggered and when we're leveling up, because when we're triggered, we can ask ourselves, well, what's that brought up with for me? You know, let's ask myself, why couldn't I have that? Or why couldn't I do that? Beautiful. There is an absolute magnifying glass on your limiting beliefs. And that's when you can start to reframe, right? You've got to have self-awareness to be able to change your thought patterns, your neurology, and your subconscious mind. So then with the level up, asking yourself more empowering questions, like instead of saying I can't, or I don't know how, or I couldn't do that, I'm too scared, I'm too young, I'm too old, like all this bullshit that we tell ourselves, right? I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the money, I don't have this, I don't have that, right? You know, I've got children, you know, or I'm single, or, you know, I've got a partner, or I've got a house, I've got a mortgage, I've got commitments, right? I've got a job, whatever it is. Just know that taking responsibility for, I've created this. I'm not going to play victim anymore. I'm going to step into my personal power and say, this is the life that I've created through the choices I've made so far. And it is okay for me to change my freaking mind. It is okay. And to ask better questions, like, rather than say, I can't do it, how could I? You know, how could I do it? Where can I go look? Where can I go research? Where can I go speak to somebody that's also walked that path? You know, what could I come up with? You know, if I really had to. Sometimes I'll use the analogy, and it's pretty savage, but it's like, if I put a gun to your head, or like, and you had to come up with a way, like, how would you do it? You know, or, you know, with regards to like time, right? You know, if you broke a leg, would you find the time to go to hospital and go get your leg fixed? Well, yes, you would, so you can make the time, right? If you really have prioritized and make it a must. If with the money, you know, like if somebody said you've got to come up with, I don't know, you know, like 10 grand by tomorrow, otherwise you'd lose a limb, would you find a way? Yes. Why? Because it's a must, you know, it's important. So we come up with all the excuses of why we wouldn't or couldn't do things. And I think it's important when we're leveling up to really call ourselves out on our bullshit and say, okay, I see you, ego, I hear you, ego, but because we didn't come out of it's recognizing we didn't come out of the womb saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I don't know how, or blah, 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 right? It's not us, it's learned beliefs. Right? So leveling up, I just believe in asking really empowering questions so that we can 100% come from our truest, most authentic self. Like, what would my soul say? What would my heart tell me? You know, what would my 80-year-old version say? What would she do? Because she doesn't give a flying fuck.
I love that. Your 80-year-old version.
Yeah, she's my go-to. She's my ultimate coach, you know.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And seeing it from that like perspective where when we're in it, there's so much emotion that is moving, but it's like when you think of someone else's, it's like, you know how when you're with a friend and it's like you can give them so much advice on their relationship because you're coming from a place of I love you, and this is like logic, where they're like emotion, like why are we breaking up? Why is he cheating on, like all this emotion is like it's such a heavy emotion. So they can't see it from that like 80-year-old perspective because they're so in it. But it's like when you take that step back and you're like, okay, this makes so much sense, and this is why this pattern's repeating, and this is why this and this and this, you start to see it from that 80-year-old perspective of like, okay, here's wisdom instead of just being like in that feeling. Sarah, do you know what your human design is? Like, do you know what you are?
Mannequin.
You are? Okay.
Yeah. And you?
So I'm a generator, a 6-2 generator.
Yeah, cool.
That's so funny. So you're like, I love that because you're like in a bunch of things. That makes a lot of sense with like your job, the jobs and stuff. You're like sampling like that buffet, like you're going through the buffet of life and like experiencing the flavors and all of that and gaining wisdom from all of that. So it's really really amazing, and like you can tell that it's definitely given you such like life experience. So with like the 80-year-old thing, like how'd you come up with that, by the way? Like I'm just
I have no idea, to be fair, but it's like my mantra now. Like I'm going to be writing a book on it and everything because it's my go-to thing. Like every time I get into the shit, or it's being fully aware that we all get into the shit sometimes. Like, let us be totally transparent about the fact that it doesn't matter if you're a coach or the freaking, you know, queen, whoever you are, you're going to go through shit times. Like there is no yin without yang. There is no light without dark. There is no sad without happy. There is no rain without sunshine, right? So it's okay to go through the shit. I believe it's how we handle it and how we handle it ourselves, right? Do we do it with compassion or do we do it with you know, beating ourselves up or beating others up, you know, like how do you go through that? And so with regards to the 80-year-old self, she's just the best reminder for really not to dwell on the small shit, like, and to not stay in the sadness or the frustration or the, you know, any of the what we class as the low vibration energies, right? She's just like, everything works out, everything's pretty freaking good, like you are one lucky girl, like you know what's going to be waiting for you when you're my age, like we are going to have some fabulous freaking funny amazing stories to tell the kids and the grandkids. Like she's just like, crack on and crack a smile, because it's going to blink in a flash, you know.
Yeah.
And she's just, yeah, she's super confident and funny in my eyes anyway.
Love it. I'm totally getting a full image of her just sitting back.
You're like, yeah.
Just like, yeah, life's good.
She is one of the best drivers as well, because I consciously know by having her as a tool is that really actually asking myself in the present moment, like moving forward, like what do I want to do, like making decisions and things like that, and asking it from her perspective as if it's already happened. What's the best choice moving forward? Like I don't need to get paralyzed by decision making, because she always knows that whatever I pick intuitively is the right decision, you know. And I don't believe we're ever given anything that we're not able to handle. And so as well, like she drives me, because that 80-year-old version could either be looking back and regretting, or she could be looking back and go, wow, I freaking did that. I didn't give a fuck what people thought. I didn't give a fuck about my fears. I just freaking did it, you know. And she's one of my best drivers.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait for this book to come out.
Yeah.
Yes, so true. Like so many people, you know, when they're going through life, they're like, oh, well, what is my parents gonna think? What is blah blah blah? And that 8-year-old woman is like, well, what is it that you want? Like looking back on it, what lit you up? You know, what made you excited? What was it that, you know, when at the end of your life, you're gonna be like, wow, that was such a journey, that was such a ride, or you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that? Like,
yeah, why didn't I? Why? Because I was bothered about what everybody else thought, or I was scared, or, you know, I was people pleasing, you know? Fuck that. She does not care.
we
I
need
love her so much.
a coffee mug that just says "fuck that," like go for it with a little grandma on it. Like
That's a good idea.
So what are the I was gonna ask you, what are the 6 steps? Like what are those 6? Is it like the hierarchy of needs? Like what are
Yeah, cool. So there's 6 core human needs. So you've got there's not like a hierarchy, they're all, you know, super important. But I'll share the first one is there's no order, but it's loving connection. It's also certainty, uncertainty, significance, growth, contribution. Now the first 4, loving connection, certainty, uncertainty, and significance, they are the core needs that every human has, and we will find a way to meet those whether we like them or not. And not always resourcefully or unresourcefully. That's everybody will find a way to meet them. It depends on our experiencing, our conditioning, you know, what we've been through in life to how we meet those needs. So we all have the same ones, but we just have different ways of meeting them. But this actually comes back to like why sometimes we'll pick the partners that we pick. It'll come back to why people have addictions, why people cheat, why people ultimately do what they do, whether it's resourceful or not. And because it's an actual need. So when you understand this, again, you can have so much compassion for humans, because you're like, okay, I understand that they're meeting this need, you know. Or they weren't meeting this need, so they've had to find a way. It's freaking incredible and powerful. And what I will share is that we all need a sense of certainty, right? Because if we felt like the roof was going to fall in, we would combust with, you know, like anxiety if we didn't have any certainty. So we need a level of certainty in our life. But if we knew every minute of every day what was going to happen, what would end up happening? You know, we'd all get bored. There'd be no point in life, right? So we have to have uncertainty as well, you know.
I guess
Tony Robbins teaches a lot about this, and he's like, God had a sense of humor, you know. And then we also need love and connection, you know, that speaks for itself. And then, but we also, on the flip side, as much as we need love and connection and we want to connect with people, we actually have the need of significance. So we actually need to feel unique. We need to feel special as well. This is why people will potentially climb the corporate ladder. This is why people will have businesses and, you know, celebrate themselves sometimes. This is but also on the flip side, this is why crime exists, because it takes pretty much zero intelligence for somebody to create a crime, but how significant are they in that moment when they're doing that, or, you know, doing something to people. So crime and violence is always going to be present in the world because of these needs.
Crazy is that, okay, so I was on a call for real estate, and the lady who was on the call, she was leading the call. She was a victim of the bombing that happened in the race. What was that race? That marathon, Boston Marathon.
Yeah,
she was literally right near the backpack when it went off. And thank God she protected her son. But she said in the courtroom years later, she had to go testify. And the guy who did the bombing was sitting there smiling and smirking. And she was just like, how can a human be like that? You know, but she had already let it go. She's like, I don't want to give him the fame and the recognition, because that's ultimately what he wanted. He was meeting that need, significance, through something that was so awful. Like, you and I couldn't comprehend that. People listening to this probably couldn't comprehend that. But what you're saying makes sense, is that if you don't have significance, if you feel like you are nothing, if you are whatever, and you're in that so low vibe, you're, you know, you don't know how to get out of that. You know, there's ways that you create that, you meet that need, whether they're great or whether they're horrible, like absolutely horrible. So this all makes so much sense.
It does. And some people, like you say, it depends on conditioning as well, what they saw, what they grew up around. Like, they might have somewhere in their timeline attached, because I always work with the pain and pleasure as well. So somewhere along his timeline, he might have attached pleasure to causing other people pain, right? So it's interesting when we dig deeper into people's neurologies as to what they do. So then, but then significance can also be really resourceful, because other people could, to be significant, help with charity work, you know, like they could be significant in helping people. So I meet my need resourcefully of significance through helping people, through working with my clients, through showing up on social media and sharing and helping and supporting, because we will always find a way to meet that need, whether we like it or not. So I've just found a way to resourcefully meet it. How I used to meet it was by being the girl that wanted attention and being the party girl and would do anything to really people please and, you know, be the center of attention from that perspective. So it's interesting how you can go from that to go to this in a resourceful way when you're aware of it, right?
Yeah, well, you went through the healing, you went through that journey, you know, you went through all that, and then now you're meeting that need in a way where you're showing up for other people, which is so beautiful. It's so powerful.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's so beautiful. And I'm just, super grateful that I'm aware of this, because this is truly the biggest thing that changed my life. And so ultimately looking at how people navigate through that is super, super cool. And then the other side is also, then you've got your growth and contribution, right? So they're actually the needs of the spirit. Not everybody meets these, but these are actually what come to bring fulfillment. So, because if we're not growing, we're dying. You know, if your business isn't growing, it's dying. If your relationship isn't growing, it's dying. If your bank balance isn't growing, it's dying. You know, so we've got to grow, otherwise we will feel like we are dying. You know, and that's where unfulfillment pulls in. And then contribution, right? For us to have fulfillment, we've got to contribute to something that we care about, that is bigger than ourselves. And that doesn't necessarily mean, like, that can be charities, that can be, you know, clients, that can be, but it also on the other side can be, you know, with your family. It can be being a mum or being a daughter, or, you know, like, it doesn't necessarily need to be huge. It can be just being significant and contributing in, you know, lives that you care about as well.
Literally cooking your family dinner. It could be, you know,
exactly your contribution. Which can bring you fulfillment. You know, like, you can, you know, bake for your family and you're like, I'm doing whatever, amazing, I'm contributing. So it just depends on what your conditioning is, what your experiences are, to how you meet your needs, and whether you're meeting them resourcefully or unresourcefully, if they're bringing you joy and fulfillment or if they're not, and having a look at those is super, super powerful. And it goes back to as well, like, so if you are not meeting the need, it's so powerful, this stuff, because when you're not meeting the need of certainty, the quickest, easiest way that we can meet certainty, which takes zero intelligence, is through anger. So like, if you feel yourself getting angry or frustrated, it's usually because you've got a lot of uncertainty and you're balancing it out with certainty. It's the quickest, easiest way to take zero intelligence, right?
Wow.
Then on the flip side, the quickest, easiest way to create uncertainty, which takes zero intelligence, is through drama. So that's why you'll find people that maybe don't have a lot going on in their lives, loves the drama, loves creating the drama, or loves attaching themselves to drama queens, or finding drama through reality TV or magazine, right? It takes zero intelligence. And so it's super interesting when you're aware of that and plug into that you're like, oh, I can see, okay, I'm around the drama, I'm creating drama. It's like, I haven't created uncertainty or variety or adventure in my life, so I'm going to do it resourcefully, or I'm getting really fucking pissed off and I'm getting frustrated and angry. Okay, well, I have compassion for myself because I haven't created certainty. There's too much uncertainty in my life right now. So I'll have compassion for myself. I'll ease it and I'll ask myself, how can I bring certainty or safety or security into my life?
Wow, that's so interesting. And you know what's really interesting is the uncertainty for a lot of like entrepreneurs. I've talked with so many like high level entrepreneurs that say that they always feel like there's like a next level, and they keep that, like, it's almost like this, like, I could lose everything tomorrow. Like some of them, when they're like in the, they just came into it, they're like, oh my gosh, this could all go away tomorrow. But once they kind of like elevate into, okay, this is secure, I'm growing, my business is growing, they've been at it for maybe 10 years, it's continuing, good cycle. So what they do is they're like, well, what else can I do? It's kind of like Elon Musk with like, well, can I create a spaceship? They want to push themselves to a area to feel that excitement, that newness.
100%. And this is why, like, for anybody listening or anybody that's struggled with it, this is sometimes why people cheat as well, because it's an easy way, even though it's not obviously resourceful, it is a unresourceful, easy, I wouldn't say zero intelligence, because it depends obviously what plays out. But if people aren't necessarily growing, or they don't feel like they're worthy or whatever, or they have the sabotaging thought patterns or patterns in general, then this is sometimes why they play into it as well, because of that adventure, let's say.
That excitement of, wow, that makes so much sense. Wow.
Yeah, it's mad, right? Mad, like good. Because you understand people.
Like, what are some things that people can do in their relationship to create that spice and that fire, so they can create more of a stable instability, like
yeah, I get yeah. And it depends as well, it depends what the relationship dynamic is, because if you get two people that love certainty, then generally, you're all good as long as you're meeting it in the same way. If you've got two people that love uncertainty, they might go hiking together, they might both run businesses, or run a business together, so you might have those sort of people. But some people, you might have the miss and match, and the yin and the yang, and they complement each other, which is cool too. I believe there's so many ways. It would depend on the couple. I would really want to understand what is it that lights you up again, and find the common values between them both. But also to really understand our 5 love languages as well. Which is your love language? Because generally we give love how we want to receive it. So I see a lot of relationships break down because then giving love in the way that they want to receive it, and they're like, why is this person not giving me back what I want? Why are they not doing that? And it's because they actually are, but they're doing it from how they want to receive love as well. So if you've got two people, like say, for example, I'm words of affirmations and quality time. So say, for example, if I'm, telling the other person that they're, how amazing they are, or sending them nice messages, or wanting to spend time with them, but their love language is, say, physical touch or acts of service. Let's say they're doing loads of things for me, but they're not telling me nice things or spending time with me, but they're doing things for me. I don't see it. I'm like, yeah, that's good, but that's not what I want. That's not what I need.
Why don't you love me?
Yeah, like, why don't you love me? You're not showing me you love me. And they are, but they're doing it in their way. So I think it's really important for every couple to understand what's your love language, what's their love language, and communicate. Well, this is how I would like, this is how I would love for you to meet this need. Like, this would be phenomenal for me. And then to hold the space and ask them as well. Communication is key, I believe, in any relationship. And then to bring the spark back in as well, like, ask your partner what would bring the spark back in, and allow yourself to be vulnerable and say what would bring the spark back in for you. And if you don't know, get to freaking know. Like, if you don't know, who knows? Like, you do know, there's just blocks, right? So yeah, I would encourage that.
I love all of that. So
Mhm.
Sarah, okay, what do you specialize in, and where can people find you? Like, obviously we know we've gotten to know you, your story, your journey, your self-love, self-empowerment coach. But like, is there a certain genre of people or a certain special person that you like working with, and where can people find you?
Amazing. Thank you, lovely. I always work with women, but I do work with an array of different women. I will work with women that potentially have been through love addiction as well. So feel like, they're consistently attracting the wrong men, or they're consistently attracting, getting into relationships just for the sake of being in a relationship, and not feeling like they're good enough ever, or comparing themselves to other women. All the negative self-talk, right? So I help a lot of women through the negative self-talk patterns that they have. On the flip side, I also help really ambitious women, tap back into their feminine energy, tap back into really understanding who they are and what they want, what lights them up. So really helping women manifest and map out what it is that they truly desire, and helping them really tap into their ultimate self-confidence to be able to move forward with that, with ease and flow, rather than struggle and hustle. Dependent on what you enjoy. So we create that side of things. Then I also help women who have been through a lot in their lives, like the trauma side of things, like whether it be sexual abuse or abuse in general, or any kind of thing that comes up, even the miniature traumas from childhood, potentially with parents or caregivers as well, that have built up. So I help women really deeply heal through that, because again, usually that's where a lot of negative thought, beliefs, and subconscious patterns can play out as well. So there's an array of different women that I like to work with, because managing and variety and uncertainty, there's not necessarily just one woman that I work with. It is women in general, because I truly believe that I've been gifted so many gifts from the universe of being able to, help anybody with and meet them where they're at ultimately. Because I'm a spiritual self-love coach, like, that is me intuitively tapping into them, their energy, their life. And everybody, I believe personally, if they can tap into their self-love, they are unstoppable.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. So where can they find you? Like, where can
Oh
they
yeah.
search everything juicy and lovely and amazing about you?
Yes, so I always say, come and find me on my socials, like Instagram, Facebook, Joanne Pickering, because that's the best place to find me. And I'm a real woman, I'm a real human. Like, reach out, message me, tell me what you loved, tell me what you didn't, tell me what questions you have. Like, I always say, like, I've got an open inbox and an open heart. Like, I'm here to support and serve in the best way I can, because that's my mission, right? My mission is to help as many women as I can to elevate and really, really tap into the most amazing, phenomenal version of who she is, and know her true magic and see the magic in life too.
I freaking love that. We're gonna do a little boomerang because you know I love my Instagram.
Amazing. I love that.
Ready? One.
Uh-huh.
Adorable. I freaking love it.
Amazing.
So what's one thing that you want to leave people with? Like what is maybe a word of wisdom, maybe just something off the heart, something that you've just that just is just it just is.
Yeah. I would say probably some of my mantras. So I say, like, when you learn to love yourself, you learn how to fly. And fly actually, I believe, stands for first love yourself, you know.
Ooh.
I love it. And then also to tap into love yourself like you would your daughter, you know, like nurture her, love her, support her, champion her, celebrate her, like do all of that for yourself, like become your best cheerleader. And then finally tap into that 80-year-old version of you. What the hell would she say? What the hell would she do? And she 100% has your back and knows that everything is going to work out with divine timing in the most phenomenal way if we choose it. And it is up to us in the here and now to choose it.
I fucking love it all. Well, thank you for being on. I totally enjoyed spending this amazing time with you. You guys, we're gonna have to have Sarah back. I just already feel I already know it. So if you got, maybe some words of wisdom, we want to hear about it. So leave it in the comments, give us a like, thumbs up, or if you're on, Spotify, if you're on podcast, iTunes, 5-star review, and let us know what you took away from this podcast. What resonated with you? What did you learn? And what's enhancing your life? So thank you, Sarah, for being on. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And
So welcome.
we hope you guys have
Thank
an
you.
amazing, incredible week, month, and year.